I think all of us, at least once in our photography journey, made the ISO setting responsible for noisy images. But the ISO setting is actually innocent. What do I mean by that? Let me explain. From a physics perspective, a camera sensor is actually just a counter. In an ideal sense, all the camera sensor does is, when a photon hits the pixel, it converts that to a single electron, and then it counts those electrons. That's all the camera actually measures, in a sense of physics. And for exactly this count, there exists a term in physics, it's called the digital number. So this equation looks a bit more complicated than it actually is. It all says the digital number is proportionate to the pixel area times 1 over the f number squared times the efficiency eta times the exposure time. The higher the digital number, the better the signal we get. And the better signal we get, the less noise there is. So you might ask, where's the ISO? And the answer is there is no ISO. The ISO doesn't affect how many electrons the camera can count or not. The only two parameters that change that we can change in our camera is the f number and the shutter speed. The ISO is just a gain of the signal. It doesn't make the camera able to count more electrons. It just scales the counts up, if you want. ISO doesn't really introduce noise into your image, but if you shoot with unnecessary high ISOs, then you have to adjust your shutter speed to get the correct exposure, and you usually make it shorter. So you reduce the digital number by shortening your shutter speed, which means you will get more noise. Let me show you a few test images to make it more clear. So here we are in Lightroom, and I made a few test shots, and I used the function of Lightroom match exposure on all of those images, so they're now the same brightness. If we compare those, here we got 1 over 1/60th of a second, aperture of 2, ISO 100. On this side, exactly the same shutter speed and aperture, just ISO 3200. And if we zoom in, we see they look pretty similar. There is not really a big difference, if there is even any difference at all. So you see, although the ISO is at 3200 and the R is at 100, we match the exposure, there is not really a difference in noise, because the shutter speed and the aperture is exactly the same. Now what if we change the shutter speed and the aperture to be both faster and more closed with the same ISO? When we zoom in, we can see there is tons of noise suddenly. And the noise is introduced not by the ISO, as you can see the ISO is the same number, just the shutter speed is faster and the f number is higher. And to finish this comparison, once again, we shoot at the same shutter speed of 1/320th of a second, aperture of 5.6, and one is at ISO 12,800, the other is at ISO 3200. And we see that they look kind of the same. Now I hope you can see with those images that ISO isn't introducing any noise to your images. You might not think, well, how does that help me in my practical photography? And the answer is quite a lot, because you have to rethink the most fundamental technical basic of photography, which is the exposure triangle. We kind of should view shutter speed and aperture as the more important factors in the exposure triangle. Our photographer brain should make requirements for shutter speed and aperture. And the ISO is only there to match the exposure so we can shoot with those requirements. Which is kind of a neat thing, because it makes our lives easier. We just have 2 factors to worry about, not 3 anymore. So what to take away from this video is, if you want a less noisy picture, Don't change the ISO. Change the shutter speed if you can, or change the aperture if you can. And secondly, don't be afraid of ISO. Just bump it up. If you need 1/160th of a second, you need 1/160th of a second. Just increase the ISO. It does make no difference. That's it for today's video. Did you ever pronounce the ISO guilty for noisy images? Let me know in the comments down below. Until next time.